It always starts the same. Some guy wrapped in more high-tech textiles than a NASA rover, looking like a tactical marshmallow, standing in the snow with his teeth chattering like maracas in a blender. He spent thousands. Gore-Tex, aerogel layers, carbon fiber boots. All the right gear, all the wrong mindset. He's not dying because he bought the wrong jacket. He's dying because he believes in fairy tales. He thought he could fight the cold. But here's the punchline. Cold doesn't exist. It's not a thing. It's just the absence of heat, like darkness is just the absence of light, or common sense on TikTok. Your body, whether you like it or not, is a furnace. A grim, hungry furnace that turns food into heat and radiates it into a universe that wants it gone. Every second you're alive, physics is trying to rob you blind, and it's doing it by the book. Thermodynamics doesn't care about your Patagonia vest. Now, the cruel laws of winter survival aren't written in a survival manual. They're scribbled in invisible ink across the sky, enforced by three ancient heat-thieving demons: conduction, convection, and radiation. The only trinity in the apocalypse you don't want praying over your grave. Let's start with conduction, the touchy-feely vampire of the bunch. This bastard steals your heat through direct contact, skin to floor, body to metal, soul to oblivion. Imagine you're curled up in an abandoned warehouse after the grid went down and the looters got bored. Concrete floor. Zero insulation. Your body radiates those precious calories, little red arrows of warmth fleeing into the ground faster than your will to live during a blackout TikTok dance challenge. You're trying to warm up a floor that has the thermal mass of a dead star. It doesn't care about you, it just absorbs. And you won't even hear it happening. Just a slow, numbing bleed until you slip into the kind of sleep you don't wake up from. But here's the kicker, you can stop it with something stupid simple. A yoga mat. A pile of dry leaves. That Amazon box you were going to use to cosplay as a refrigerator? Anything that breaks the physical link between your flesh and the vampire floor. You're not heating the ground, you're just stopping it from stealing from you. Then there's convection. Oh, you'll love this one. The schemer. The whisperer. This thief doesn't need to touch you, it just weaponizes the air around you. You think you're clever, sealing yourself in one room of your unheated suburban nightmare palace. You light a candle, maybe even a propane heater if you're feeling spicy. But the room never warms up, and you start thinking, maybe the candle isn't pulling its weight. Wrong. What's happening is something called the stack effect. Sounds cool, like a combat move in a post-apocalyptic anime. But it's not. It's physics quietly dunking on you. That warm air you create rises to the ceiling, then cools, drops, and drags cold air in through every microscopic crack in your windows, walls, and sense of security. Your house is breathing, and not in a sexy, meditative way. It's hemorrhaging heat with every breath. So instead of trying to heat a cavernous room with the thermal properties of a leaky garbage bag, you go small. Russian doll it. Put a tent inside the room. Better yet, make it a tent within a tent if you're feeling extra paranoid. Now you're heating a manageable 60 cubic feet instead of 1,000. Same gear, smarter strategy. You've turned your environment from murderous freezer to slightly hostile closet. Congrats, you're evolving. And then there's the final ghost in the machine: radiation. This one's sneaky. You can't see it, you can't smell it. But it's always there, stripping heat from your body and flinging it into space, like a bad ex with your Spotify password. Your body radiates infrared heat constantly. You're like a dying campfire no one bothered to gather wood for. And while you're busy radiating, your house is engaged in its own battle of losing one. Let's talk pipes, water pipes, to be specific. Because here's a delightful quirk of nature. Water expands when it freezes. Most things shrink when they get cold, kind of like your plans for that minimalist luxury bug-out bunker. But water? No. Water goes full diva, forming an ice lattice that pushes outward with enough force to rupture steel. That means the pipes in your home aren't just frozen, they're ticking time bombs. That fiberglass insulation wrapped around them? Yeah, that's not armor. That's a blanket over a grenade. The only actual solution is surgical and brutal. You drain the pipes. No water, no expansion. No expansion, no explosion. But who does that when the grid's up, the Wi-Fi's humming, and your biggest survival concern is whether DoorDash delivers during a thunderstorm? Let's imagine for a second you're using a propane heater to avoid turning into a popsicle during the next blackout. You seal the room, of course, because your brain is still clinging to the trap, the warmth fantasy. It feels smart until it starts to kill you. See, burning propane isn't a magic act, it's chemistry. Propane, oxygen, boom heat, water vapor, and carbon dioxide. But you know what's missing in that equation after a while? Oxygen. Because your little survival chamber is now a slow-motion gas chamber. As oxygen levels drop, the chemistry flips. Your heater gets desperate. It starts belching out carbon monoxide instead of CO2. Colorless, odorless, undetectable, except for the part where it replaces the oxygen in your blood with death. People don't realize, in a sealed room, that heat source becomes a traitor. You'll drift off feeling warm and victorious, and then you just won't wake up, like a cozy death nap. All because you didn't calculate your BTUs versus cubic footage and the airflow required to keep the oxygen party going. This is why survival isn't a Pinterest board of cozy winter blackout ideas. It's a relentless math problem with fatal consequences. The heat you lose, the heat you keep, the air you breathe, everything has to balance. And the universe is not a forgiving accountant. So you've rigged your heating, broken up with the floor, and you're trying not to suffocate yourself in your own disaster cocoon. Nice. But now comes the part no one wants to talk about. Your heat still doesn't stick around. The second that flame goes out, the cold comes back like your ex when rent's due. Why? Because you're heating the wrong thing. You're trying to heat air. And air is the deadbeat roommate of the thermal world. Air holds heat about as well as a screen door holds water. It has low, specific heat capacity, meaning it takes almost no energy to warm up and gives it all away the second you stop feeding it. It's light, chaotic, and disloyal. Picture air molecules flying around like hyper toddlers in a bounce house, too far apart to cooperate, and absolutely useless in a crisis. Now contrast that with something dense, something heavy, a stone, a jug of water, a pile of bricks you took from your neighbor's landscaping while they fled to Florida. These objects are blessed with thermal mass. Their molecules are packed tight, and when you pump heat into them, they hold it like a bitter grudge. Then, long after your heater shuts off or your fuel runs out, they radiate that heat back out slowly, warmth that lingers, like guilt after finishing the last can of beans. So what's the strategy? You stop heating air and start heating objects. You create a thermal battery. It could be bricks around your wood stove. It could be water jugs stacked in a circle around your portable heater. It could be that cast iron Dutch oven you panic bought after watching one prepper video and never used because Postmates still existed. Anything with mass and patience becomes your friend. Your very warm, very quiet friend. And while we're on the subject of patience, let's talk about you, the human furnace. Your body is constantly generating heat, whether you're sprinting from raiders or just curled up questioning your life choices. But there's a catch: you only generate heat by burning calories. And those calories come from food, which means your get ripped before the collapse diet might be the reason you're shivering in a handmade blanket fort. Here's a survival irony for you. The lean, shredded CrossFit hero might die faster than the doughy guy who knows how to make soup from rats and regrets. Fat is insulation. Calories are fuel. The apocalypse doesn't care about your six-pack unless it's canned and high in sodium. If you're not eating enough, your internal fire dims. No fuel, no heat. You become a popsicle in a Patagonia jacket. And let's not forget hydration. Oh yes, the underrated, underglamorized killer of survivors everywhere. Dehydration thickens your blood, slows circulation, and makes it harder to move that precious heat from your core to your limbs. You may not feel thirsty because it's cold, but that's just your brain lying to you, like it always does. Drink water. Warm if you can. Snow doesn't count unless you melt it. And no, just eating snow doesn't hydrate you while keeping your core cool. It gives you hypothermia and diarrhea. A double death combo. Back to your shelter. You've got insulation, great. But insulation doesn't create warmth. It only delays its escape. It's a bouncer, not a DJ. So if there's no heat being generated or stored, you're just slowing your descent into the abyss. Think of it like a parachute with holes. You'll fall slower, sure, but gravity still wins. Now, some of you might think, what if I just crank up the heater full blast, get the room hot as hell, and then seal it up like a tomb? Bold. Stupid, but bold. Let's revisit the ventilation math, because death by carbon monoxide isn't the glamorous finale you're imagining. Every fuel-burning heater has a BTU rating British thermal units, aka how hard it punches the cold. But that punch needs oxygen. You need to know your space's volume, your heater's consumption rate, and how much fresh air needs to enter per minute to avoid suffocation. And if you're thinking, that sounds complicated, congratulations, you've just identified your cause of death. So you vent, carefully, strategically, crack a window, install a carbon monoxide detector if you somehow still have Amazon Prime drone drops in your area. But remember, vent too much and your heat escapes. Vent too little, and so does your soul. It's a balancing act between warmth and breathability, like sleeping next to your dog under a blanket after chilly night. You might be asking, isn't there a simpler way? Sure. Die. No. Seriously, there's no cheat code. There's just physics. The laws don't bend because you're cold, hungry, or emotionally fragile. This isn't Minecraft. This is thermodynamics. There are no buffs, no perks, no immunity to conduction because you bought a name-brand parka. You either understand how heat moves or you become an object lesson in someone else's cautionary tale. Let's say you finally nail the basics: foam pad under you, tent inside the room, radiant heat battery from that old cast iron radiator you ripped out of the neighbor's house. You've even got food, you're hydrated, and your carbon monoxide levels are low enough that the hallucinations have mostly stopped. Great. Now comes the mental game. Because survival isn't just a test of materialists, it's psychological warfare against boredom, despair, and the creeping realization that modern life didn't teach you jack. You've gone from Googling how to change a tire to Googling how to eat your cat ethically. Your biggest threat now isn't just heat loss, it's entropy. Your brain starts eating itself the moment comfort is gone. Keep a journal. Make a schedule. Pretend you're in prison because you are, and the jailer is your own mind. Routine keeps the madness at bay. Just ask anyone who survived solitary confinement without licking the walls for fun. Which brings us back to the point. You don't fight the cold. You manage your heat. You don't dominate nature, you dance with it while it tries to step on your neck. And if you treat the apocalypse like a camping trip, the only trail you'll blaze is the one to your frozen corpse. At this point, you've made it through the first few days without turning into an ice sculpture or carbon monoxide casualty. Congrats! You're officially ahead of half the influencers who thought number van life would be fun in January. But don't pop your last can of beans in celebration just yet. The universe still has a few more cosmic jokes lined up for you. Let's talk about false hope. One of the deadliest things in winter survival isn't the cold, it's comfort. That brief moment when your improvised heating system actually works, your little thermal battery is humming like a space heater from the Stone Age, and you start thinking, hey, I got this. That's when you screw up. You forget to check the vent. You don't monitor condensation buildup. You overestimate your fuel. You decide to take a quick nap because the room is finally warm. What you don't realize is that while you're cozy under your 18 stolen blankets, the temperature is nosediving outside like it just got dumped, and all that moisture you've been exhaling into the air, it's not leaving. It's condensing on your walls, your gear, and your soul. Your cozy survival chamber slowly becomes a sponge, and a wet sponge is colder than death. Here's a fun physics fact. Water conducts heat 25 times faster than air. So when everything you touch becomes damp, your sleeping bag, your clothes, the cardboard you're lying on, you've created a highway for heat loss. You're no longer insulated. You're marinating in thermodynamic betrayal. This is how people die in winter camps, in snow caves, even inside their own homes. Moisture. It sneaks up. It doesn't shout. It just builds. Quiet and patient, until you realize your insulation is now a heat siphon. Cotton kills, they say, but soaked wool isn't much better. What's the fix? Ventilation. Again, even if it's sub-zero outside, you need airflow. A small vent at the top and one at the bottom, just enough to let moist air out without turning your space into an icebox. The trick is ballast again. Winter survival is just one long algebra equation written by a psychopath. And then there's fire. Good old fire. Man's first and most unreliable survival tool. You think fire solves everything until you realize it's not your friend. Fire doesn't care about your situation. It burns fuel, not feelings. It eats your oxygen. It demands constant feeding. It burns your time, your wood pile, and probably your eyebrows if you're not paying attention. Fire is a diva. It needs dry fuel, good airflow, and constant attention. And if you're the kind of person who couldn't commit to a gym membership for more than 2 weeks, you're probably not ready for the 12-hour wood-stoking marriage that fire requires in a survival situation. Oh, and here's something they never show in survival shows. Wood is heavy. Like, really heavy. If you're hauling enough firewood to heat a space for 3 days, you're moving hundreds of pounds of material. That's assuming it's dry, which it won't be, because the last time you thought ahead, it was for prom. Wet wood not only burns like garbage, it produces smoke. Thick, wet, lung-shriveling smoke that will cling to your clothes, your gear, and your dignity. And if your fire is inside and not properly vented, you've just turned your shelter into a primitive gas chamber. Again, by now, you might be asking, why don't we just go full caveman and build a shelter underground? Great idea! Until you remember that the ground is the enemy. Conduction, remember? Earth is a massive heat sink. Unless you insulate properly walls, floor, ceiling, you'll be sleeping in a grave you dug yourself. Not metaphorically, literally. You see, there's this charming psychological trap in survival. The illusion of action. You dig a hole, you build a fire, you seal a room, and you feel safe. You've done something. But survival isn't about doing it. It's about doing the right thing, in the right order, at the right time. You miss a step, you die. It's not dramatic. It's just math. Speaking of math, let's talk calories. Not the TikTok-approved kind. The real kind. The ones you need to stay alive when you're not moving much, but still burning heat like a steam engine in a snowstorm. Just sitting in a cold room, your body can burn 3,000, 4,000 calories a day trying to stay warm. And that's if you're just sitting. If you're chopping wood, melting snow, and avoiding roving gangs of desperate crypto bros, you might burn 5,000 plus. So where are those calories coming from? Not your granola bars, not your keto freeze-dried chicken strips. You need fat. Dense, oily, glorious fat. The apocalypse diet isn't lean, it's survival butter, peanut butter, olive oil, lard, even straight-up bacon grease if you're feeling nostalgic for a simpler time. Think of your body like a coal furnace. Carbs burn fast, fat burns long. If you want to survive a blackout winter, you eat like a raccoon that found a Crisco stash. Now, let's flip the script. Let's say you're not alone. Maybe you've got a family, or a squad, or some wide-eyed interns who thought this would be a good learning opportunity. Guess what? Now you're not just managing your survival, you're managing theirs. And people are stupid. Someone always thinks they're fine in just a hoodie. Someone opens the sealed window because it smelled weird. Someone accidentally knocks over the water jug you were using as thermal mass. The weak link isn't just your gear, it's Dave from accounting. You have to lead. You have to educate. You have to enforce the physics of survival like they're commandments. Because they are. And if you're alone, that's worse. You won't even have anyone to blame when you die. Isolation in the cold is a slow psychological grinder. You stop talking. You stop moving. You stop checking the thermometer or venting the shelter. You forget that your life requires maintenance. And when you stop maintaining, the cold doesn't politely knock, it moves in. That's the true face of cold. Not a blizzard, not a storm, just silence. A creeping, devouring silence that slips in when you forget that survival is not a one-time choice. It's 1,000 tiny decisions made over and over again, each one a vote against entropy. By now, you've battled conduction, tricked convection, outlasted radiation, and even kept Dave from burning down the shelter while trying to make s'mores to boost morale. You've done the impossible. You've survived longer than most government response times. But now comes the final boss of cold weather survival, energy management. No, not your fuel reserves. Your physical, psychological, and emotional reserves. And here's the ugly truth. You are not built for this. Modern humans are soft. We complain if our oat milk is slightly too cold. We've got thermostats that argue with our phones, cars that warm our butts, and workplaces where excessive air conditioning is an HR issue. So, when the lights go out, the Wi-Fi dies, and your favorite streamer can't tell you how to feel anymore, you're not just cold. You're cosmically unprepared. Everything in your life has trained you to consume, not conserve. Your house leaks heat because it was never meant to retain it. It was built to assume endless power. Your clothes are stylish, not survival grade. Your mind? Wired for dopamine, not discipline. And now, you're trapped in a frozen world where every choice has consequences and every calorie counts. So let's talk about movement. In winter survival, movement is heat. Shivering is a biological furnace kicking into emergency mode. Walking, chopping, squatting, what others generate internal heat that keeps your core from dipping into eventually dead territory. But the cruel trick is this: movement also burns fuel. And, in survival, every calorie burned must be replaced or you're just speeding up the countdown. That means you ration movement like you ration food. Efficient, purposeful, brief. No pacing, no panic dances, no burpees unless you want to die ironic. Rest is survival. Movement is survival. The line between the two is razor thin, and every step over it is another vote toward or against your continued existence. Let's build a little scene in your head. It's day 7 of the blackout. You've run out of coffee. You've been wearing the same pants for so long they've achieved sentience. You've drained the last water from your thermal jugs, and condensation on the walls is freezing in lace-like patterns. Beautiful. Deadly. Your firewood pile is shrinking. Your thermal mass objects are lukewarm, like leftover soup from a gas station. You have to decide. Go outside and try to collect more wood or stay inside and conserve your core heat. Now, remember what we said earlier. Physics doesn't give a damn about your situation. If you go outside improperly dressed, you'll lose heat faster than a fast food ice cream machine loses functionality. If you stay in and don't replenish your fuel food or fire you, become a human popsicle in a very poetic ending. The solution? Pre-planning. Not sexy, not cinematic, but the kind of prep that keeps you alive when everyone else is starring in a slow-motion, freeze-dried horror film. You have pre-cut wood inside your shelter, you have dry kindling in waterproof containers. You have calories that don't require heat to digest thigh fat. High-carb monstrosities that would make a nutritionist cry. You are the beast of logistics, and that is the only kind of beast that survives winter. But maybe you didn't plan. Maybe you were too busy filming your latest collapse core aesthetic series for YouTube and forgot to stock up on essentials because chaotic neutral survivalism sounded edgy. Now you're cold, you're starving, and your only heat source is a candle and your own panic. What now? This is where psychology becomes your weapon. The people who survive these moments aren't always the strongest, fastest, or best equipped. They're the ones who don't break, who can sit in the dark, cold, silence, and think, who remember to breathe slow, deep breaths to conserve oxygen, who know how to layer their clothes, eat small meals frequently, wrap their feet in plastic bags to reduce sweat loss, and who don't lose their minds when the cold gets inside their skull. Because, eventually, it will get in your head. It'll whisper that you're already dead, that the work isn't worth it, that sleep is a warm embrace, not a final exit. And when that happens, you need anchors, ritual, noise, rhythm, sing a song, count seconds. Talk to yourself like you're not alone, because your brain needs company. Even if it's your own voice bouncing off cracked drywall, you are the last campfire in a universe that wants you gone. The moment you forget that, you start fading. Now, let's get real brutal for a second. Most people who die in winter don't go out in some epic fashion. There's no dramatic collapse in a snowstorm. No wolves, no slow motion stumble into oblivion. They just stop, sit down, lean back, sleep. And that's the most dangerous comfort of all. The urge to rest. Not the useful kind, but the seductive kind. The just for a minute kind. That's when your core temperature drops below 95 degrees Fahrenheit. Hypothermia sets in. You stop feeling cold. You feel warm. Euphoric. You undress because your body thinks it's overheating. You become confused. Slow. You lie down. You smile. You die. Let me say this again. You feel warm right before you die of cold. That's the betrayal. That's the trap. So you must learn to mistrust comfort, to question warmth, to treat it like fire precious, useful, but dangerous in excess. You live in the margins. Not too hot, not too cold. Not too active, not too still. You are walking the knife's edge, and pretending otherwise is what kills most people. And here's where we circle back to the truth. Survival isn't about courage. It's not about gear. It's not about being a mountain man or a self-declared apocalypse prepper with a bunker full of unseasoned canned soup. Survival is about understanding the math. The calories in versus the heat lost, the volume of air versus the fuel consumed, the rate of conduction versus the insulation barrier. It's you against physics. And physics always wins, unless you play smarter. So next time you see some wannabe survivor posing on Instagram with tactical snow goggles and a $2,000 jacket, remember he's not surviving because he spent money. He's surviving because he understands the enemy. And the enemy isn't cold, it's entropy. So here you are, still breathing, still relatively warm, possibly talking to yourself and naming the walls. But hey, that's just efficient use of time in the apocalypse. You've survived the long night, the cold math, and the collective ignorance of modern society that thinks roughing it means no cell service at the Airbnb. Now, we finish this journey by turning the mirror around, because winter survival isn't just about the temperature outside, but the one inside your head. And what lives in there? Denial, arrogance, the ghost of consumerism whispering sweet lies like, you can just buy a gadget for that. Let's get something straight. In the real world where the power's been out for 9 days and the roads are frozen, over there is no buy now, 2-day shipping rescue coming. That solar generator you ordered is sitting in a UPS warehouse buried under 2 feet of ice. That sleek LED lantern your favorite influencer swears by? It's dead. Because you forgot to charge it. Because you were too busy filming unboxing videos instead of learning physics. And that's the rub, isn't it? We're a culture of solutions without understanding. We want hacks, not knowledge. We want 10 tips to survive the cold, but we never ask how the cold works. And that's why people freeze in homes with thousands of dollars of gear. They bought tools for a fight they didn't understand. They didn't fail because they were unprepared. They failed because they were uneducated. So here's the truth. Stripped bare. Winter doesn't care about your feelings. It doesn't care about your money, your looks, your social status, or your homemade podcast about resilient minimalism. It only obeys the laws of thermodynamics, and it punishes those who don't. That's not depressing. That's liberating. Because if survival is just physics, then it's a game you can win if you play right. If you learn how conduction drains your heat, if you block convection from stealing your warmth, if you harness radiation for your own survival instead of letting it betray you, if you stop heating air and start heating mass, if you ventilate your shelter, hydrate your body, and feed your furnace with the calories it needs, if you listen when your brain tries to trick you with warmth that isn't real, you don't need a bunker to survive. You need knowledge. You don't need a bug-out bag that weighs more than a small child. You need strategy. You need to understand that every minute in winter is a negotiation with entropy, and you are either buying time or paying it back. And if you're really clever, you start seeing patterns. You realize the same rules apply to other disasters. Blackout, energy balance. Flood, water management. Pandemic, airflow, and exposure. Every survival scenario is just a different version of the same cruel logic. Control your environment before it controls you. But let's say you've made it through the worst of the storm. The power finally comes back on. The heater rumbles to life like some ancient beast awakening. The internet flickers on and blesses you with memes. You've made it. You think the game's over? No. Now you get complacent. That's the final killer. You forget everything you learned. You slide back into comfort like it was never interrupted. You replace hard-earned wisdom with convenience. You stop prepping. You stop learning. You start trusting systems again. That's when the second storm hits. Because the truth is, this wasn't the apocalypse. This was just a drill, a warning shot, a chance to learn without paying the ultimate price. But most people won't. They'll throw away their emergency supplies. They'll laugh about it at brunch. They'll say, "Wasn't that crazy?" And the next time, it won't be just cold. It'll be chaos. So what do? You keep the knowledge. You keep the habits. You remember that cold is just a messenger. It tells you the system is fragile. It reminds you that comfort is temporary and survival is eternal. You write down what worked. You teach others, especially the ones who think Uber Eats is a basic utility. You store calories. You fix your insulation. You test your heater in July. You read. You prepare. Because when the cold comes back, and it won't be with drama or fanfare. It'll slip through the cracks. It'll drain your heat. It'll wait until you're tired. And then it'll whisper, "Just rest a while." And if you're not ready, you'll listen. But not you. You know better now. You know that survival isn't luck, it's physics. You respect thermodynamics. Or they break you. So now I ask you, which law of physics have you been ignoring? Tell me in the comments.